Summer is upon us. Do you want to stay cool and dry at night? Try bamboo sheets from CozyEarth.com. Not only do you get a good night's sleep and stay cool and dry, but also you get to save 21% off just by using our code at checkout. InfoGo. And they have a 100-night sleep trial, so it's a win-win. If you don't like them, send them back, but I promise you'll fall in love with them. And while you're over there, check out their socks. They have a whole line of apparel. And that's CozyEarth.com. Use our code InfoGo at checkout to save 21% off. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Wade.
And I'm Kat.
We titled this episode The Nazi Bell, Hitler's Strangest Secret Weapon. You know what? I say let's just jump into it.
So, deep underground, in the final collapse of Nazi Germany, the war above is already turning into ruin. Allied bombers pass overhead in relentless waves, shaking the ground so deeply that even buried infrastructure feels temporary. Beneath this surface chaos is a hidden complex carved into stone and reinforced with concrete. Activity continues in near total secrecy.
Long corridors stretch through the dark. Electric fixtures that kind of flicker under that power. You know what I'm talking about? Like the 1940s electrical work.
Yeah.
Just picture that. And so the SS Guard, well, they move through the passages with strict discipline, escorting engineers deep and deeper into restricted sections of the facility. This is not a standard factory or bunker. It is part of the vast underground network built during the later years of the war, when Germany shifted critical production below ground to survive constant aerial bombardment.
At the center of one sealed chamber sits a structure that later accounts would describe in unsettling, consistent terms a large, bell shaped metal device suspended from a support frame. It's not ornamental or symbolic, it's industrial, heavy, and constructed with the precision of wartime engineering pushed to its limits. The object hangs like an inverted bell, its surface cold and utilitarian, or surrounded by cables, pipes, and heavy electrical equipment feeding into its base.
Inside the device, according to post war testimony and fragmented reports that, well, emerged years after the war, there is a mention of a rotating violent substance, sometimes described as a fluid, sometimes as a luminous or suspended medium. The interior is lined with materials described as ceramic like, suggesting an attempt to isolate or control whatever processes were occurring within. The chamber around it reportedly contained high voltage systems and thick power conduit cables of, well, sustaining extreme electrical loads. In other words, there's a lot of power going to this thing.
What makes the accounts particularly strange are the physiological effects attributed to exposure during alleged tests. Witnesses whose statements vary cannot be independently verified describe nausea, intense headaches, nosebleeds, and disorientation. In some versions of the story, personnel reportedly collapsed shortly after entering or working near the activated device. None of these claims are supported by confirmed technical documentation, and no verified physical evidence of such a machine has ever been produced.
Despite the lack of concrete proof, the descriptions that appear in later sources remain oddly consistent in one detail: the shape of the object. Always the same, always as a bell. There are documents that mention it, testimonies that contradict each other, and one object that may or may not have existed at all. A pause follows, as if the historical record itself is uncertain how to continue. So in German, it would be called Die Glocke, or the bell. And I think let's just go with the bell from here on out.
What exactly was it supposed to be? A secret weapon? A failed experiment? Or a misunderstanding born from fragments of wartime documentation that never fully survived the collapse of the Third Reich? Now, why do references to it appear in some post war accounts but fail to connect to any confirmed archival record? Was SS General Hans Kammler one of the key figures in Nazi underground construction and weapons infrastructure, actually connected to any such project? Or has his name simply become attached to every unresolved corner of Nazi wartime secrecy?
9. Sorry, I had to do it. And finally, if the Allies did capture, well, the German scientific research at the end of the war through programs like Operation Paperclip, which I think that's a future episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's got to be.
indeed.
What did they preserve and what did they kind of just kind of took away? And what was lost in the chaos of the final collapse? Or perhaps the most uncomfortable possibility is similar. That in the vacuum left by destroyed archives, hidden facilities, or incomplete histories, imagination found the gaps first.
A low mechanical hum begins to rise, as if something deep underground is still running even now. Then the title appears. By the final years of the Second World War, Nazi Germany is no longer an expanding power. It is a state under siege, collapsing inward under the weight of sustained Allied pressure. Strategic bombing campaigns are systematically dismantling industrial capacity, turning factories into rubble faster than they can be repaired. Fuel shortages ripple through every layer of military logistics, leaving armored divisions stalled and aircraft grounded. On every front, from the Eastern Front against the Soviet Union to the advancing Western Allies, Germany is steadily losing ground.
Yet, within the leadership of the regime, the interpretation of reality begins to shift in a different direction. Conventional warfare, once the foundation of military planning, well, it's increasingly treated as insufficient. The assumption grows that standard weapons and strategies can no longer reverse the direction of defeat. In this environment, desperation becomes, well, a kind of engine for imagination, if you will. If the war cannot be won through known methods, then the solution must exist, well, outside of those methods.
This is the psychological space in which the idea of Wunderwaffe emerges, the term meaning wonder weapon, which was used to describe a range of advanced or experimental technologies that Nazi leadership hoped could alter the course of the war. And some of these projects were real and historically documented. The V 2 rocket, for example, developed under Werner von Braun, his team became the world's first long range guided ballistic missile. The Messerschmitt Me 262 introduced operational jet powered flight in combat conditions, years ahead of its time. Germany also experimented with early guided missile systems, advanced submarine designs, and infrared night vision equipment that pushed the boundaries of existing military technology.
So, first of all, Germany had the technology.
Right.
They truly did. Not even going to try to dance around that.
There's a reason why Project Paperclip happened.
Yeah, absolutely. But there were not myths or rumors. They were genuine technological developments, many of which influenced post-war engineering and aerospace programs years ahead of their time. But their existence had an unintended consequence, right? As these projects advanced, well, they kind of blurred the line between what was experimental and what was possible and what was imagined. In the final phase of the war, secrecy surrounding military research, well combined with fragmented communication and collapsing infrastructure, created a distorted information landscape. Real programs, well, they were hidden behind layers of classification. Failed projects, well, they kind of disappeared without documentation. Emergency relocations scattered personal and, well, records.
In that environment, even documented technology began to feel incomplete, almost mythic in retrospect. The truth of advanced wartime research became large enough and fragmented enough that it could easily support speculation beyond what was actually proven. And it is in that gap between reality and reconstruction that later stories like Die Glocke began to feel, at least narratively, almost plausible.
The bell. Let's just go with the bell.
The Bell.
All right. So Hans Kammler and the Shadow Empire, right?
Hmm.
As the war tightens its grip on Germany, a parallel structure of power begins to emerge beneath the visible collapse. And at the center of this hidden architecture is SS General Hans Kammler, a figure whose role placed him at the intersection of engineering, logistics, and extreme secrecy within the, well, Nazi war machine, if you will.
Kammler was not a frontline commander. He operated in a different domain entirely, the construction of systems designed to function after the surface world had become unusable. His responsibilities included overseeing the expansion of underground weapons production facilities, coordinating the use of forced labor on large scale engineering projects, managing critical components of the V 2 rocket program, and directing the construction of subterranean industrial networks intended to survive sustained Allied bombing.
And by forced labor, we mean Jewish concentration camps.
Right.
Yeah. So these projects form part of a rapidly expanding underground war effort. As Germany's cities and factories were destroyed above ground, production did not fully stop. No, instead it moved downward. Tunnels carved into mountains by forced labor, entire factory complexes, well, they were concealed beneath forest, hillsides, and, well, rural regions, right? Railroad lines were routed into reinforced underground corridors, and the goal was not simply to protect industry, but it was to preserve continuity of production in conditions where surface world was no longer reliable.
The result was a fragmented but extensive hidden infrastructure. It was not a single coordinated underground city in the modern sense, but rather a network of dispersed facilities connected by urgency and secrecy. Within this system, Kammler became one of the key administrators responsible for making impossible construction timelines function under collapsing wartime conditions.
And as the Third Reich approached its final months, Kemmler's role, well, it becomes even more opaque, right? Historical records become inconsistent and fragmentary. Different accounts place him in different locations at different times. Some reports claim he took his own life near the end of the war. Others suggest, well, he may have been captured by Allied forces for interrogation. Still, others, well, they propose he attempted to negotiate or disappear into the chaos of Germany's final collapse. But no single version, well, has ever really been verified.
See, in history class, you're always taught that he killed himself. I never even heard that he could have been captured by Allied forces.
Well, you know what? We should do a whole episode on Nazi hunters.
Oh wow.
You've never heard of those?
Mm-mm.
Man, like, so they had these submarines that were set to go to Argentina. Nazi gold was stored in Switzerland. Some of it's still there today. Like there's all kind of things that are just out there.
Huh.
Now, do I think Hitler survived or killed himself? I think he was a narcissist, so I think he committed suicide personally.
Hmm.
Even though his body's never been verified. I feel like it's either all or nothing for him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But a narcissist could also think that they'd be able to get out of it at some point. So I mean,
Nine.
I don't know. I'm not an I well, I don't think I'm a narcissist anyway. But
Maybe
I
you
guess that's
are.
something a narcissist would say.
Yeah. God Almighty knows. Kill
I mean, I have considered the thought, but then, it's
of
very
becoming a
confusing.
dictator.
No, no. What is consistent about all this, though, is not the ending, but the uncertainty surrounding it. Even basic details of his final moments remain disputed, and post war intelligence interest in his technical knowledge has been suggested but never fully clarified in the public record.
This ambiguity has contributed to, well, his later symbolic role in historical speculation, right? In narratives surrounding secret Nazi technology, well, he often functions less as a fully documented historical figure and, well, more as a structural possibility. The man who may have known too much, precisely because of where he worked and what he oversaw. If any single individual had access to, well, the full scope of Germany's most deeply buried wartime projects, from underground factories to, well, experimental weapon systems, it probably was Kammler.
The story of the bell does not emerge from wartime archives or officially declassified military records. Instead, it appears much later in fragments, filtered through post war research, secondary reports, and disputed interpretations of older materials.
Wait a minute. You're saying interpretations of older materials and secondary reports?
Right.
So, in other words, we really don't have the reports. We just think we have the reports. Could be, not be.
We could relate that concept to many things that are very important today.
Hmm. There's a lot of fascinating stuff about Germany. Like, have you ever heard of the door in Antarctica that they created?
Yeah,
Yeah. Like,
the ice wall.
yeah, the ice wall. Anyway, I think aliens helped them out.
Aliens have been here throughout history. One of the key figures responsible for bringing the idea into public discussion is researcher Igor Witkowski. Or
Ooh,
is it Witkowski? Because I think that's Russian, yes?
I don't know. Just go with whatever you feel.
Okay.
But
One of the,
I think you nailed it right off the bat, though.
I don't know, because I feel like that's more Russian. I'm pretty sure the Auskies is Russian. But I don't know enough different languages to say that confidently. I
I
just
think
have a
when I
good
go to
way of
edit it,
guessing things.
I think when I go to edit it, I'm just going to leave it the way you did it.
Okay.
All right.
Who claims to have enc- who claims to have encountered references to the device while reviewing materials connected to post-war intelligence investigations in Poland. According to his accounts, these materials included interrogation transcripts noted attributed to Polish intelligence services and fragmented wartime documentation that referenced unusual experimental programs conducted in the final phase of Nazi Germany.
Experimental programs in Nazi Germany. Wow.
There's a
How
lot of them. They're pretty gnarly.
they are disgusting in some.
The experiments with twins was rough.
Maybe we do a whole thing on that. But
Maybe we do that for Patreon.
yeah, have you ever read the book Doctors from Hell? It's like these transcribers in court that turned around and wrote a book about these doctors giving their testimony, and it's called Doctors from Hell, and it's all about their experimental projects that they performed on concentration camps and stuff like that.
No, but that sounds fascinating.
It mm, I loaned it to somebody. Anyway, that book will keep you up at night. But however, a crucial limitation must be stated clearly. None of the original documents described in these claims have ever been publicly released or independently verified. So, what does exist in the public sphere is secondary reconstruction of alleged source material, not the primary evidence itself. So, in other words, we're getting it secondhand, right?
Per usual, it
Yeah,
always goes through a filter system.
absolutely. And within this reconstructed narrative, the device referred to the bell, well, it's described in a highly unique term, right? It is said to have been large, bell-shaped metallic apparatus, several meters in height, mounted within a heavy industrial frame designed to support, well, a lot of mechanical and electrical stress. At its core, Some accounts describe a rotating violet substance, sometimes referred to under the name of Zerum 525, though this is no verified scientific record of such a material ever exist in any kind of established chemical or physical literature. So, in other words, it could just be a made-up substance.
The more dramatic aspects of the story come from reported effects associated with testing or activation. These accounts describe severe radiation-like sickness in personnel, dehydration of biological tissue in nearby organisms, and unusual environmental effects such as plant and animal deaths in the vicinity of the device. Some versions also include claims of electrical disturbances and perceptual anomalies experienced by witnesses. These descriptions vary widely between sources and cannot be corroborated through any confirmed technical or medical documentation.
As the narrative evolved, different interpretations of what the bell might have been, well, they start to appear. Some speculate it could have been related to experimental propulsion systems or advanced aerospace concepts being explored in late war Germany. Others suggest it may have evolved in high energy physics research or electromagnetic field experimentation that was conducted under extreme wartime secrecy. More speculative interpretations extend further, suggesting, well, anti-gravity research or entirely failed experimental technologies that were never fully understood or never really fully completed. However, it is essential to separate the structure of the story from the evidence supporting it, right?
Right. What is being described here is not a verified weapon system or a confirmed historical program. It's a layered narrative constructed from partial references, retrospective interpretation, and fragments that have not been independently authenticated. Some elements may have been Some elements may be rooted in real maritime research culture. Others may reflect post war reconstruction or reinterpretation of complete information. And some may have developed entirely within the space where historical uncertainty meets imagination. This is the critical turning point in understanding the bell, not as a confirmed artifact of Nazi engineering, but as a case study in how fragmented history, secrecy, and technological ambition can combine into something that feels structurally real, even when the underlying evidence remains unresolved.
I say we should take a small break before we continue.
Sounds good.
I've got to get a Coke.
Uh, I've got to get a Pepsi.
What? No, Coke.
No, Pepsi.
You know what? Let's debate this during our break.
Sounds good.
I think I'm gonna win.
Really, I'm getting a margarita refill, but here we are. Hold on.
We'll be right back. So now that we're back, in modern day Poland, in a forested region far from major industrial centers,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I came across Big Fork Brands recently, and it's become one of those finds you actually want to tell people about, and you don't find that often. Okay. They're doing bacon sausage, plus these really solid pork jerky snacks and Chicago style sauces. Basically, upgrade anything you throw them on burgers, hot dogs, fries, throw it on there. It works.
but I bet it's packed full of junk.
Actually, it's made with clean ingredients and real care. That's small batch with no shortcuts, and people are obsessed with the flavor. You can go over to bigforkbrands.com, use our code INFOGO at checkout, and get 20% off anything on the site.
You can find the link and our code in the show notes. There is a concrete structure that has become one of the focal points in later interpretations of, well, the bell. It is located somewhere in Poland and is often referred to in an informal discussions as the hinge, a name that was not given by engineers or wartime planners, but by later observers attempting to, well, describe its unusual appearance.
The structure itself is not hidden in the sense of being underground or sealed away. It is visible, weathered, and partially reclaimed by nature. What remains is a circular arrangement of reinforced concrete, segmented into heavy structural forms that suggest industrial purpose rather than architectural intent. The geometry is precise enough to feel deliberate, yet incomplete enough to invite questions about what it originally supported.
Some conspiracy theories, well, they interpret the structure as being linked to, well, the Bell narrative. Some suggest it may have functioned as a test rig or a mounting platform for experimental equipment. Others propose it could have been a containment structure or even part of a system designed to stabilize or support high energy experiments conducted in an area during the war. These interpretations really they rely heavily on what it resembles or the contextual association rather than, well, documented engineering records. In other words, I think, right?
Right. However, historical and engineering based assessments offer a more grounded explanation. The prevailing view among researchers is that the structure was part of wartime industrial infrastructure, likely related to conventional manufacturing or cooling systems associated with nearby facilities. In this interpretation, the circular form is functional rather than symbolic, shaped by the practical requirements of industrial design under wartime constraints. There is no confirmed documentation connecting the site to experimental physics programs or advanced weapon research.
But really, what makes this structure persist in public imagination is not what is proven, but what is absent from the record. The incomplete documentation of late war construction projects combined with the destruction of many records during, well, Germany's collapse. Well, it really does leave gaps that are easily filled by, well, interpretation. A ring of concrete in a forest, well, it can begin to resemble a technological artifact when viewed through the lens of mystery rather than, well, infrastructure. And this is where interpretation begins to, well, really outweigh evidence. Mystery often begins when abandoned engineering meets human pattern seeking. And a structure that was once purely functional becomes something, well, entirely absence of context. In other words, aliens.
Crop
I,
circles.
I think I have to say it in every episode almost now.
When the Second World War comes to an end, the collapse of Nazi Germany does not simply close a chapter of history. It opens a competitive scramble for knowledge. Both the United States and the Soviet Union move rapidly into occupied territory, not only to secure victory, but to extract scientific, industrial, and military intelligence before it can be lost, destroyed, or claimed by the other side.
Project Paperclip.
This period became one of the largest organized transfers of technical expertise in modern history. Facilities are searched, laboratories are cataloged, personnel are identified and relocated. Among the most significant of these efforts is the American program later known as Operation Paperclip, which aimed to recruit German scientists and engineers with expertise in rocketry, aviation, and advanced weapons development.
Hey, I got it right.
Yes.
Well, I wonder if the bell could have been something that the Soviet Union got a hold to and was like, we're not sharing this.
Who knows? Because they're not going to share it. And we're never
Yeah.
going to know until like we're probably dead in the ground. So
How did they get to space before us?
have we really ever been to space?
Actually, how do we go to space before dial-up internet?
Is the Earth flat?
Hmm. One of the most well-known figures associated with the transfer is Van Buren, right? During the war, he was deeply involved in the development of the V-2 rocket system, which was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. After the war, he and many members of his team they were brought to the United States under Project Paperclip, where their expertise contributed, well, to the American aerospace development, including the Saturn V rocket that would later carry astronauts to the moon. Or did they?
Or did they? Hmm.
Aliens.
It was all just a show.
Actually, we really went to the moon. I just want you to know
Yeah.
that.
I'm just messing around, guys.
Me and you both, but aliens for sure.
The
Uh,
transition
Von Buren was an alien,
extraterrestrial.
but I
So,
mean, he was a German alien.
oh, anyway, this transition creates a powerful historical tension. On one hand, it's a documented example of how wartime technology can be absorbed and repurposed into a peaceful scientific advancement. On the other hand, it introduced a broader question that has persisted in public imagination ever since. When knowledge is transferred under secrecy and urgency, what exactly is preserved and what is left behind?
If advanced German research was actively recorded, evaluated, and integrated into post-war programs, it becomes natural, at least in narrative terms, right?
Hmm.
To wonder whether all projects were fully understood, fully documented, or fully disclosed. Well, this is the space where speculation begins to grow, especially around rumored or undocumented technologies from the final years of the war, like, well, the bell.
Over time, the story of the bell becomes entangled with a wider cultural ecosystem of Cold War secrecy and science fiction infused mystery. Elements of the narrative are absorbed into broader UFO lore, including associations with post war fascination around Roswell, speculation about restricted military zones such as Area 51, and the growing category of unidentified aerial phenomena reported during the Cold War era.
Told you it was aliens. However, it is important to distinguish between historical record and cultural interpretation, right? There is no verified evidence linking the bell to any post-war aerospace programs, classified recovery operations, or modern unidentified aerial phenomenon research. But what does exist is a process of narrative blending, where separate historical threads, real scientific programs, right, classified intelligent efforts, and public fascination, well, they begin to merge into a single symbolic framework. In other words, it's aliens.
In this sense, the bell does not persist because of confirmed documentation. It persists because it's become part of a larger story humans tell about what happens when technology, secrecy, and geopolitical competition collide in moments of extreme historical pressure.
You're just gonna let me roll with the alien thing, right?
Sure am.
Okay. So when the story of the bell is pulled out of rumor, reconstruction, and, well, retrospective interpretation, what does remain is a simple but important boundary. There is no verified scientific or historical evidence that confirms the existence of any functioning bell, and I'm using quotation marks with my fingers here, device, nor any documented program matching the description attributed to it. There's no authenticated blueprints, no prototypes that were ever recovered, no declassified records from Allied intelligence archives. None of this conclusively describes a machine capable of anti-gravity effects, time manipulation, or any other extraordinary claims associated, well, with later interpretations of the story of, well, the bell. So it was aliens.
Yes, yes, it was. At the same time, it is also true that wartime Germany was engaged in a wide range of advanced scientific and engineering efforts that, in aggregate, can appear striking when viewed through modern lens. Research during this period included experiments in high voltage electrical systems, investigation into radiation effects, early work in rocketry and propulsion, and theoretical studies in physics that, while constrained by the technology of the time, pushed into areas that were not fully understood or standardized. These projects were real, documented, and in some cases influential in post war scientific development. The important distinction lies not in whether innovation existed, but in how far interpretation can stretch beyond it.
So the gap at the center of the Bell narrative is not between absence and discovery. It is between what actually was attempted within the limits of wartime science and what later generations imagined might have been possible within the shadows of secrecy. incomplete archives and fragmented historical records. And that space technological ambiguity becomes narrative possibility. And possibility slowly, well, it hardens into, well, what would later become a myth. Bigfoot.
Loch Ness monster.
I still say it's aliens. Aliens is behind everything.
It's the government. It's a
No,
cover up.
no. Maybe an alien government?
Cover up.
Is there a shadow alien government?
Could be.
Okay.
We're all being controlled or something.
The puppet master.
Let's cut the
Honestly and
strings.
truly, it does feel like we're in a video game, right?
It does.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I am struggling to go to work every day. I gotta be honest.
yeah, throughout 9/11. No, now give them COVID. Give them the
Oh,
hantavirus.
dude. Like, I have not had a break my entire life.
I'm telling you, we're in a video game and it's Frogger.
Yeah.
We're literally
Yeah.
trying to get across the street. And you know what? The lily pad is sinking and we're jumping straight into the alligator's mouth.
Gulp.
Oh my.
So the bell persists not because it's supported by confirmed evidence, but because it sits at a convergence point of several powerful historical conditions. Real wartime secrecy created genuine gaps in documentation. The collapse of the Third Reich led to the destruction and dispersal of power. Post war intelligence operations introduced additional layers of classification and selective disclosure. The Cold War amplified public suspicion toward hidden technologies, and underlying all of this is a long standing human fascination with the idea that advanced knowledge might exist just beyond the edge of what is publicly known.
So these conditions, I'm still on the Frogger thing of gulp, like I really am.
Gulp.
You got to stop. I got to finish this. Our listeners are going, please stop, Kat. Let's get through the end of this.
Sure, sure.
All right. These conditions do not prove the existence of the bell, but they do explain why the idea is resilient. It is structurally supported by uncertainty, even when it's not supported by evidence. From this perspective, well, the bell becomes less a historical object and, well, more of a conceptual boundary marker, right? It represents the point which documented history ends and interpretive reconstruction begins. That is why it continues to appear, reinterpreted across decades of writing, research, and, well, speculation.
Not because it was confirmed, but because it was precisely the kind of story that emerges when certainty breaks down and imagination takes its place in the gaps. The distinction is subtle but essential. History is full of things humans almost built. Myth is what we call the space between almost and impossible.
And, so when the story of the bell is pulled apart and examined through every available lens, what remains is not a clear answer, but a spectrum of possibilities that never fully resolve. It may have been misinterpreted engineering from the chaos of wartime construction. It may have originated as a fragment or a rumor that grew in the absence of complete documentation. It may have been shaped from partial intelligent records, secondhand accounts, and post-war reinterpretations of, well, scattered material. Or it may simply be a fictional reconstruction that gained structure over time because the historical conditions around it, well, allowed uncertainty to survive.
In practical terms, there is no final verified conclusion. The archival gaps remain. The primary evidence remains inaccessible or unconfirmed, and more one moves through the layers of retelling, the more the story shifts from something that can be proven to something that can only be interpreted. And I mean,
Hmm,
we're probably not going to see that ever.
gulp.
So, and yet, despite that uncertainty, the persistence of the narrative and its own form of evidence, not for the existence of the bell itself, but for something broader in how history is processed and remembered.
So the real story is not whether the bell existed as a physical object. It is why the idea of it continues to reappear across decades of writing, speculation, and cultural retelling of the story.
Well, we initially only had oral storytelling to begin with, so maybe there is some truth there. We just won't know about it in our lifetime.
And Nazi Germany was so, what is the word I'm looking for? They were all over the map, man, because they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant. They were looking for,
I
uh,
mean, they were trying to solve the mysteries of the universe.
that they really were. I don't think it was anything more than aliens.
Part of the answer lies in the historical conditions that surround it. The Second War pushed engineering, science, and industrial production to extreme and often unfamiliar territory. Entire systems were developed under pressure, secrecy, and acceleration. At the same time, vast portions of that work were destroyed, hidden, or scattered during the collapse of the regime. Secrecy, both intentional and incidental, created permanent gaps in the record.
And to those gaps, interpretation, well, it does flow. Fear gives structure to silence. Complexity invites reconstruction. And when documentation is incomplete, imagination does not wait for permission to fill that missing part, right? It builds continuity where the record breaks and coherence, well, it remains only in fragments. In that sense, the bell survives less as a claim about technology and more about a reflection of how humans respond to unfinished history.
It's a story shaped by what is known, shaped even more by what is unknown, and shaped most of all by the tension between the two. And so the final message is not one of certainty, but of echo. Maybe it never existed, or maybe it exists now only as an echo between what history recorded and what it forgot to explain. And somewhere in that silence, the bell keeps ringing.
Yeah, it keeps ringing to the aliens.
Come home. I don't know. I'd never heard of it before, but that, like you said, the Nazis were after everything.
They were after everything. And honestly and truly, I think aliens. Not really.
Well, if you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to support this show, you can do so at Patreon or take advantage of some of our sponsors. Either way it goes, all of those links are in the show notes.
And as always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
Whether you've been with us from day one or just tuning in, thank you.
Join the Facebook group and Info on the Go.
I like how you're just avoiding my question. Over there, get to know us.
I'm really good at that.
I see.
Send us some fan mail using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
Leaving that review really does help others find us. You can also email Kat or myself directly at
Info on the Go podcast at gmail.com.
let us know if you think it's aliens. All of that is in the show notes. Till next time.
Yeah, let us know if you think it's aliens or an inside job. Stay
Or
curious.
both. Or both.
I mean, since, our current POTUS has declassified documents of aliens, supposedly,
Okay.
allegedly,
Is this internet stuff?
most likely.
Okay. Do 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 do. I can't do it.
Do, 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 do.
Everything you see on the internet is true, kids.
It's not. It's really not. But I mean,
Do
make
your
sure
homework.
you do lots of homework. It doesn't end, okay?
No, don't go down the rabbit holes. Look,
And don't
stick
just listen to one news source.
definitely don't listen to one news source. You gotta be you know what? Our kids today really have to be sleuths, right?
Oh, God, they got to read between the lines of all the news stations.
There is so much misinformation out there. Like I've been joking around this whole episode as aliens because it used to be witches and it used to be
Right.
something else like werewolves and Dracula and whatever else.
Dragons.
I think we're in the age of aliens.
This is the age of Aquarius.
Not Aquarius, aliens.
I mean, it's still space.
Space. Hmm.
It's still astrology related.
I cannot wait till we start doing our October episodes again.
Oh man, I'm so stoked.
Me and you both. Anyway, that's all I've got.
Me too.
All right, later. If your stomach's been off lately, like bloating, reflux, or just not feeling right, there's a simpler way to get back on track.
With Professor B's Digestive Aid, which is an all natural blend of pure honey and ancient apitherapy, a herb rooted in Roman tradition. You know how at least they had some things right, right? It's designed to gently support and balance your digestion.
No long ingredient list, no harsh additives, just two powerful, time tested ingredients working together. It's even the same formula used to help cancer patients manage digestive discomfort.
And right now, you can get an exclusive 10% off any product. Just use our code INFOGO at checkout.